Okay, so last week we talked about Ajax, which stands for, what's Ajax stand for? Anybody remember? It's not the thing you clean your floor, but okay, the A stands for asynchronous. Okay. Yeah, asynchronous JavaScript. The A is and for some reason, and XML. Okay, so Ajax. That's what it's so you use those three technologies. And using Ajax, you have to use this constructor or this object called XMLHttpRequest. Okay, and this is this will serve. Well, this will allow your application or your file, your JavaScript file, to read data from another page within the same domain. That's the limitation. You can only access data within the same domain. And a phrase which I didn't use in here is what's called the same domain policy. Okay, so anything that has the same domain, even though if it's a subdomain, it should still work. Okay, you cannot go to an outside domain and retrieve data that way. You can, but that domain or that server needs to set up some settings in order to allow it. Okay, otherwise you can't do that. So that's the HTTP request. I mean the Ajax. We usually could refer to this as just Ajax. So when you hear the term Ajax, it's always this. Okay, we talked about how you can set it up. If we go into the code down here, it will look just like this down here. So you always want to first thing you get an instance of that API. So this is a constructor. Everything you see the word new here, this is always a constructor, just like your usual object-oriented programming language. Right? It's a class, right? In this case, an object. And then now this HTTP request can access a lot of its properties and functions. And some of these are things like on-ready state change, the open, the send, and you have more like the ready state, the status, okay, and you get the also response text. So these are the common ones you will probably use when you create Ajax, use Ajax. So get that object, and again, this is just to check that your browser does use it. You could ignore that if you don't want to. And open it. Open the request. It takes two parameters minimum. The get, and then the file that it needs to get or read. Okay, could be a text HTML file, could be a JSON file, could be a text file, could be an image file, and then you send it. Once that is sent, then you need to check the status. So here we put into a separate function on ready state change calls the function call alerts. Here you could put all these here inside the same place. Here is fine, but of course function is always much nicer because you can manage it better, right? So on your request, you need, while it's doing this, also when you send let's see. Okay, so when you make the call and then you need to check the state, you could ignore this if you want. You could just say if the status is 200, in order to get a status 200, this would have already been done. Okay, so if you want to go through each phase, then you check like this. Otherwise, you just say if the request that status is 200, that means it's an okay, everything is good, then go ahead and process the data. So at this time, the data is coming from the server itself to your code here. Your file will be stored inside this response text. The keyword here is text. Okay, so that means it comes in as a string, and usually in the form of a JSON data string. If usually that's the the typical one, but it could be anything. It doesn't have to be a JSON string. It's just a text, string text. So that's why when you receive it, then you need to format it using the JSON.parse. Okay, change it to an object if you have to. Otherwise, it'll be just a string text. And then you can use, usually from here, you call a function and process the data. And this is just for the error message if it fails. Okay, so now we're going to move over to JSONP. We call the XML the Ajax. This is known as the Ajax. Okay, let me pull that. Only works with the same domain. There's some restriction called same origin policy. This one can be set, again, I mentioned earlier that on the server itself, if you have access to your own server or whoever owns the server, they can change a parameter on the server to allow cross-domain access. Okay, so for example, if you have from your, let's just from Chronos or from Apollo, and you want to access, I don't know, Google or Facebook, okay, using Ajax. You can't do it unless Facebook or Google, they turn this on for you, which I doubt they will let you do it because it's dangerous, right? So they don't let you do it. But you can. I mean, for practice, or if you own these domains, you can do it. But usually they won't let you do it. So this is known as the same origin policy. It says that web browser may only allow scripts on page A to access another page on the same domain, same origin. And the origin means that it has to be in the same protocol using the HTTP or FTP or the domain name here and the port number. You can specify these, can be very specific. Okay. And then the other one is JSONP. It stands for JavaScript Object Notation. That's what JSON is. With padding. So the P is the padding. This padding here really, it's what's called a callback function.
Okay. When I hear padding, I automatically think CSS.
Yes. Right.
Continue. Sorry.
Yeah. No. Yeah. Well, the reason is they call it padding is because the data comes from the server. It comes in the form of an object and not a string. So it's padded or it's contained within the function itself. Remember that I have a note somewhere in here. So the difference between these two is that Ajax returns a string data in the form of string. So you have to convert it if you need to access those strings, if it's JSON. Whereas JSONP, it already comes in the form of an object. So you don't have to do any conversion at all. You can just use it, okay? Because it wraps or it padded the object inside a function here, which you need to create. And we'll go through an example in a minute here. So Ajax, JSONP does not use XMLHttpRequest, so therefore JSONP does not rely on Ajax. It's a completely separate technology that you don't have to use, like go through this whole process. If you see, remember we have like about 4 or 5 different lines of code just to read the data from a different server or from the same server basically. But with the JSONP, you just have one single URL and you're done. So with JSONP, it's very easy, it's very powerful, and then also can be dangerous because now you can access somebody else's domain, and when you do that, you have to really trust that domain. Make sure they don't send you any malicious code because it comes in the form of an object. That means that object can have some malicious script in there, and they can run on your server. So it's very risky.
Is there a way you can test it?
Not the script, but yeah, we'll do a test. Okay, so you can pull data from another site. So the way to do that is quite simple. So the URL to get that data will look something like this. Okay, notice that you have a domain name, whatever the domain is. It could be your own server, or it could be a complete different server, doesn't matter. And followed by whatever that domain is. It could be like that, or it could be, maybe you have a file called data, maybe like public data.php, something like that. Okay, it could be a file, it could be another file that you may not see it, depending on the domain, whoever is providing this URL. Okay, if you create your own, then you may want to say, I don't know, some data. Okay, and inside this PHP file, you will have to do some write some script to process the data and then send it back to whoever requests the data. When you send it back, then the data coming back will be stored inside this function called process data. This one here is something you will have to write on your own, on your end. Okay? And so you use the keyword callback, usually callback, equals a function name, and this is on your side. You write the function like here. I'll call it process data, and the data will come in here. This variable could be anything here, could be just data, could be item, could be just a local variable name. Okay, so it's similar to the response tags. Okay, the response tag comes in the form of a string, but attaches to this object called HttpRequest here. And JSONP, it comes inside this function. It's wrapped inside this function, and then in the form of another variable name, and you access that directly from within your function here. So to call that, JSONP is if you know the URL, if you know what they require. Usually they will tell you what type of information you need to send over. So in this example here, I'm not sending anything. If they say, if you want to use my API, use this URL, okay, and then give your own function, and then after that you need to submit the following. I need for example, a keyword called anything you want, right? Just say, I don't know, cat. I need a keyword. I also need a user ID. So you have to supply these fields, for example. And I also need maybe like a date or something. Something like that. So these are the fields that you have inside your function, your code here. So your script here requires the user, whoever using it, they must supply a keyword, supply an ID, and supply a date. Okay, so from the user side, they have to supply by using this URL, and then when you receive the data coming in, you can grab the keyword, grab the ID, and grab the date, check your database, whatever it is to be. You found those data, and then you send it back to the user, and that data will come back into this function here. And this function could be anything they want to call it. That you don't really care from your side. Okay, and then the requester, the person requested, will receive the data, and so in their side, and the function they created here will process the data within their side, the end of it. Okay, does that make sense? Okay, and so if you don't know this information here, sometimes it may not work. Okay, if you don't know it, then then you can't access it, right? So usually they'll give that out to you. And we'll do one with the Flickr. You'll see that Flickr has some kind of cool stuff you can pull. So step one is create a function to prepare and process the data is coming in. Then if you then supply the URL, and then you'll see that when it comes in, your data will be in this format. It's a JSON. In this example, is JSON format. And then that's why it's already an object, so you can access directly. And then in here is an example of Flickr. Before we go into the Flickr example here, let's do something similar in the book. Okay, I think the book has that's a what's it called? This is an API we use at the Gumbo wicketsmart.com, right? So you can find the URL. This one here. So this is a URL that the book uses, and I think it's still active. So you can see this is a URL that goes to their site and has a callback function called update sales. I can grab this URL. The rest here I think is just gibberish. I mean, just to make it look cool, but this is all you need here. So if I grab this URL and if I put it on the browser here, okay, put it here. If I click on it, you'll see that it comes back in this data. This is the data sent from this site. This is live data coming from that site. Okay, in this form. And so if I call by using this URL, I can get all this data from them and then process this data. So notice it's coming from their server. Okay, so with that URL, we can go ahead and create a function here to process some of those data. So let's go ahead and create a project in here. I'm going to go in here and create a Unit 5. We're in Unit 5, right? Okay, so let's create a new file. Let's call it index. I'll create a script folder, script file. We'll just call this JSONP.js for now.
Why did you put that in the file? Why didn't you just create the JSON.js?
I'm going to put my script in a JavaScript file, just like how I did the other ones.
Okay.
So in my HTML file here, so when I call my script, right, script src is equal to js.jsonp, just the script. And then this URL here, okay, I'm going to use that. You put it in here. Script src equals that URL. Okay, so I'm calling this URL to grab the data, and then this site here is going to send the data back to a function called update sales. It doesn't have to be update sales. It could be just say process data. It's up to me. I have to supply this function, and wherever it is, it needs to be stored inside my script.
So the process data is actually your function.
Yeah, it's a function on your side. You process the data. Yeah.
Okay.
So in my script, the JSONP script, I need to create this function here. If you don't have it, it's going to say this function is not found. It's going to look for this function. So for example, if I save it like this, and if I go ahead and run the script here, this page, let's put something here. Let's put in the body here, just say h1 JSONP, I guess demo, right? So we know that that's the file. But save that and run it. Okay, so here's that site. If I click the F12, you'll see that process data is not defined. It's expecting that I should have a function called process data to receive the data. Okay, it's looking for that function, so you have an error. So what that means is in your code, So I must have the function ready to receive the data. So in the script here, I'm going to write a function called process data. And the data is going to come into this parameter call, you can call it data, you can call it whatever you want, it doesn't really matter. Just it's a variable name. And just to show that I have the data received coming from the server, I'm just going to upload that to the console. Right? Just to show that it's there. Before you go ahead and process the data, just make sure it works first. So now if I save this script and go back to my page, and then clear that, refresh it, you see that it's happy. It finds a script, and it comes in here as an object. This is the output here. I output in my script here, console log data. So that data is an object. If you expand this, you'll see that it has two objects, two items. And if you expand the items, it has those information. This is hard to see, right? It's hard to see. So last time I showed you that you can actually format this so it looks like a table. So we could format this function here. Instead of log, you could put console.table, and because this is an object, it's an array, it will upload that into a really nice table so we can see the data. Okay, so let's save that and refresh this. So I have two items coming in. So I have an index, it's tracked, the name, the item, the time, the sales, total sales of that item, and this is a location, the actual position of that store, I'm assuming, right? And also give you the array information here as well. So how do you access this data here? Well, you have to make the variable global so you can access it. Just to see how this works, I could go back here, and instead of data here, I could put a global variable down here, out there, just say G data for global. And then at the same time, I'm going to assign the G data to that data here. So I can access it in the browser. So this is global now. So I can go back here again and refresh this, and if I type in the G data, you see that has the same information, but now I can access its data. So how do you get this name here? And you see that's an array, so it'll be G data of the first index dot whatever this is, right? So I think I'm maxed out here. What that means is I can go and say G data of the first item dot name gives me hood. Okay, G data dot sales gives me 5. Okay, so once you see this object, you can access their values if you expand the array, and you can figure out, okay, so it's an array of sub-0. Inside the object here you have these items. If it has another array inside here, let's just say the name has a array, you can say, so it'll be array sub-0 dot name sub whatever it is, index dot something. Okay, so you can see that object. Any questions? How this was retrieved from their site? Okay.
Your code again. So, here's a question I have for you.
Mm-hmm.
Why not, instead of creating the G data below your function, don't you change the process data to G data, and then the console table G data? save yourself a step.
You mean here?
Yeah.
No, because this is a local variable.
Okay.
Okay. So, well, let's do that. If I comment that out, it changes to gdata. This data is the one that comes from the site, so that this data contains whatever this is, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then instead of doing that, I could just omit that. You mean I could put gdata here, right?
Okay.
Okay. So if I save that and save it, go back here, refresh. So the data comes, same thing. If I type in gdata, I can't reach it. Okay, yeah, it's a really good question. Right, and that's usually the first thing you would think that, okay, I can access any element in any data in here. I have gdata, I have data, I have whatever it is, but you forgot that anything you put in the function head inside the function here are only available within the function itself, so the local.
Okay.
And the browser tool has to be outside in the close. So I just put that so you can access to show on the browsers, but really didn't need to do that.
Uncomment the variable,
Mhm.
and now run it.
Okay. Refresh that. It's undefined. It's declared, but it's undefined. It's empty. So this gdata is not the same as this gdata. Okay, even though it's the same name. And it has to do with the it has to do with the variable scope thing. Okay, so no, that's a really good question. So just make sure that we have a data here. If it's maybe it's lowercase, let's change it to uppercase. Okay, let's try that. That's still there. Gdata. Okay, and gdata. So it's unreachable because it's inside the function. And then if you have the same name here and there, if you do this, if I put gdata is equal to gdata, now you have like, think it's gonna work? No, why? I think you're right. It's no, but do you know why? Right. So let's see.
I want to say because you turn the function into a variable. By putting gdata equal gdata,
Mm-hmm.
will it run?
Well, let's see. So there's there for gdata. Still undefined. So what's going on?
All right, school us.
Well, the reason is because scope, again, the scope thing, right? So if you look at this gdata, this ID kind of tells you the scope. If I click on it, it doesn't reach outside here, only reach this data. So this gdata is this gdata. I'm going to assign itself to itself, basically. So it's still local. Okay? If you don't have the thing here, if I change that to like a data with a lowercase d, and if I use a lowercase d, it looks inside the function here. Is there a local variable called gdata with a lower d? Oh, none, not found. Then it will go outside the function and look for that outside. In that case, oh, there's one here in the global space. Use that. So now I can use that lowercase to get the data from, assign the data to the global variable. And then now if I refresh it, the gdata lowercase has the data, but g big data is not reachable. Okay. So if you want to use the same name, then you have to use the keyword this. in front. I think so. This here should be refer to the outside data. We'll see. So let's process this. G data. You see it? I can reach it now. So if you remember Java, same thing, right? Instead of function, you have a local variable. If you want to reach the global variable, use the word this variable name if you have the same variable name. So this refers to the one outside in the global space. If you have the same local variable name here, use this to access the outside data. Otherwise, give it a different variable name. Okay. A little bit tricky, so sometimes you run into this issue here. Okay. So now, as you can see, it's very easy, right? You just basically, if you know the URL, put it here, callback equals a function, and you're done. You process the data when it comes through. Okay. Let's do one with Flickr. That's more fun. So let's just say that in here, I'm going to add a button and give it an ID, just button. We'll just say get Flickr. What do they have? Just pictures, right? I don't know, photos. Get Flickr data or something. So I'm going to click on it. It's going to call a URL and then process the data or something. But before we do that, make sure that the Flickr URL works. I think I have it in the code here, in my notes. This URL here. And if you're interested, this is a link to that site. If you click on this link here, it takes you to their site, and they tell you what's available, what's not available for them. So this is a public feed that anybody can use to pull in data from a Flickr site. So you can grab this URL here. This is the URL. Bless you. And these are the parameters. The ID, if you want to, get data from a single user ID, you need to know that person's ID and then pull that from them. If you want to pull from multiple users, put the IDs with an S, and then put a comma separated name in the URL. And then the tags would be like what kind of tag they use. And then the format here would be like a JSON format. Okay, so if I copy this URL here, this is the available link. Yeah, I put it in the notes here. You can also search for Flickr public feed. It should also tell you. Or if you go to Twitter, Facebook, a lot of sites, they'll give you some free feeds you can use in your code. Okay. So if you have a Flickr or Snapchat account and you want to build your own site and grab all those photos that your own content, pull all those over to your own site, this is how you do it, using JSONP. Okay, so I'm going to copy that, put inside my script here. For now, we're just going to put it here in the head section so we can see exactly where what it contains. So that's the link. And let me turn the gumball off for now. I don't need that gumball for now. Let me just comment that out. So that's the URL, and then you want to use a callback function. We could use process data, the same one. Okay, it's gonna come back, and the process data again just gonna output the data to the table. Okay, the same function. Now, and then it needs to have an ID, and these are, as you can see, it's optional, right? It says it's optional, optional. All these are optional. You don't have to specify any of these. You can just use the URL and you get some information. So what that means is you can just grab this. If you go to a tab and put it here, run it. It's just the data, but it comes in the form of an XML format. So that's the default. Okay, if you want to give a different format, then here you want to say the format here, the attribute format. I think you can use this in any order, doesn't matter. I could say format, so use like format is JSON. Okay, if I change that, you'll see that it comes in JSON format. Okay, and that's what I want. So if you look at it, it has the title of that, whatever that is, the link to that actual account, the description is any, the date, and then the items. So the title of the item is that, and then a link to the actual item, the media itself. So whatever this is, this is the link to that image, and then and so on, and the publisher, the ID here. So if you know the ID, this is the one you want. If you grab this ID, whoever this is, and if you only want this person's stuff, then put that in the ID. Just say if I do that, and if I put an ID is that, okay, then only that person's stuff comes through. As you can see, that's his stuff here, right? You're filtering only to one person. If you know another ID, put that comma here, and then another ID. So if I go back to the other list, right, this is one person. Here's another one. If I use that, just put a comma. So I could say JSON format, and ID is IDs with an S is that person, and let's just say this person. So two people. Oops, did I do something? So two people. So now I have only those two people's data. But I didn't put any tag, so that means whatever they have, it all comes through to this site here. And if I say, oh, you know what, I don't care about these IDs here, I just want everything that has to do with the tag of cat. Right? So now I have images about cat. They have the tagging for cat. So let's go back here. I can say process the data. I want the what are the other default? The ID, the tags. I don't want a cat anymore. Let's go with dog. Let's go with dog this time.
Yeah, I want to see what comes up.
I don't like cat no more. Okay, you don't want cat no more. Oh, then we have the mode. It could be either all or any. Okay, so you can put tag mode is any. So which is dog, and the tag mode is any, and the format is going to be JSON. Okay, so that's the script. So let's save that. And run this title here. So, did I make a mistake somewhere? Process data, callback process data. I'm just going to copy from my notes what I have here. It's the same one, I think. Let's see. Okay, so use the one I put in here on this site here. And these, again, could be optional. But let's say dog, we could put like, instead of dog, we could put like Racine and see what happens if there's anything about Racine. So I have the tags will be Racine, tag mode is any format is JSON. Okay, so save that. Go back to the site, reload. So here is a list of some objects. So you have an object within an object. It's a lot of them. If I click the object here, you can see that it has an item, 20 items. Each item has, the first item has the media and has the link here. So we'll see what this one is. Okay, close your eyes.
Yeah.
I'm scared to go there now. Did I miss it? Let's try again. The media object is this one. Copy that. There. So you have the picture of that one. So now you can access those data and display on your site. So again, it will be whatever the data is under the dot items, and then sub index 0 or sub 1 or 2 or 3 or n, and then go to the, so you're gonna have to track this down, the media, and then dot m will give you that. Okay, so what that means is in our process, this function here, the data comes in. If you want to display this to the browser or to the page, we need to let's just put it here. We'll put a div tag with an ID of result, right? And then we'll put in here the image tags. So we'll append the images and display it to the site here. So we need to target this ID result. So back to our script. Remember, our script is in the very top, so we will make sure we target that using the window unload. I'll put somewhere, I'll put window.unload function, and we need to well, notice that when you run this file, it runs a script right away. Okay, and if you don't want to run it yet, then you should run it only when you click the button. But if you do that, that means you shouldn't put a script here yet, right? But since I run it, then it will run right away, and we pull this data. It goes right into my script, and then we're just going to display the data. So for now, we're just going to say the data for the result will be stored inside the var called result. There's the document dot, you could get element by ID, or you could use the query selector, and then in here you put the ID result. Or I'll use this one. You can use the other one, it's fine too. So by this time, when this is loaded, I'm not sure if the G data already has the data or not, because when it runs the script, it would have already loaded the data here, give that to the global data, and then that result, the data should be already available. Okay? Because when you run the script, this is not part of the, that means it will wait until everything's run. So by the time we'll wait, this already have been run, right? It runs it already, it pulls all the data out, and then when it runs it, it calls this function, runs it, load the data to the global data here, So after that's done, then this one loads. So this one actually runs last. So by that time, this gdata already contains some data. So this is also why I put it in the global space. If not, you have to put your script at the bottom of the page. So now I can say I'm going to put the images inside the div tag here using the image tag. So you can say var image is, again, I'm going to create the image tag. So document dot create text element, create element. The element is going to be an image tag. So we create this dynamically. Once that's been created, we need to attach the attribute called src, right? Do you remember what the image tag looks like? Okay, so that's rc. In other words, it will look like image src is, right, domain.com slash, image.jpg, something like that, right? It will look like that. So we need to get this domain image, and that's coming from the data here. So it'll be the gdata. I'm just going to test one of them. Gdata dot, how do we say item? Can't remember. Gdata dot items. Okay. Gdata has this object here. If you put description, you get blank. So items, and then it's an array, so of sub-0, for example. So items of 0, the first item, dot, what's the next one? You don't want the author, you want the image, so this one here, the media, dot m. That gives the link to the image file right here. You want to target this data. If you want the other information here, the tag, the title, you can the publish date, right? So you put the media m, and that is the link to that tag. And then finally, we want to add that to the, append that to the result, which is the div tag. So we'll say result that append child, and then the child is this image. Okay, so let's see if that would load to the web page. Just one image. Okay, so go here and refresh. I have an error. Okay, cannot read property append child of null. Alright, so it looks like it doesn't work because that child doesn't exist. Line 14. Line 14, which is this one here. Results, which is this div here.
You have that there, it says results. It should be just results.
I did. Yeah, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see if that's the case. Yay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So there it is, our first image. All that just to grab that image. A lot of hard work in the back end, but once it works, it's functional. You see how appreciative your user will be, okay, or even yourself. So how do you pull all those data and display here on the site? How do you do it? What do you think?
JSON.
Well, I mean, this is already in JSON, right?
Huh?
It's already in JSON. I want to display all the pictures that were sent to me through this API. How do you get the data and display like this? I don't want to do this. I don't want to do like image 1, image 2, image 3. Yeah, it's a loop, right? So you could set up a loop in here. So each loop is going to create an image tag, set the attribute for the picture, and then you add it to the tree. So this can be set inside a loop, this part here. So all you have to do is, let's say for I, right? Say let I, or you can say var I, the first item. We'll loop through the items here. Remember, items has about n to the, 0 to the n. If you look at this, it showed us that you have about, is it 20?
Well, it's 19 in the
Yeah, about 20 or so, right? So you could say g items g data dot items length. Okay. Well, actually, I less than that, and then I plus plus. Just you want to make sure you grab the right one, because if you don't, then you won't get the result. In other words, if you just put like g data items or dot length, okay, it's not going to work, because that only gives you about what, 1 or 2. So if that's the case, then that's fine. But if you want to get the actual pictures, then you want to make sure you go to the correct property. In this case, it's the items dot length, and then so loop through the whole list, and then wrap that with the result here. So get an image, and instead of 0, we'll put I here, and then append that to the tree, loop through the entire thing until we're done. Okay, let's see if that's going to give us the whole set of images. Okay, so let's save this, reload,
Lots of working out ones.
and there it is. All our Racine.
Oh, no, that ain't Racine.
It says the tag is Racine.
Yeah. You recognize anybody?
No.
Me either.
You know what? Let's do this. Let's do something interesting. Should we get like maybe GTC? How's that?
I kind of want to see that tabs now. I really need to see it.
You can see it at home, okay? Okay, GTC for the tag and see what happens.
I have tabs on mine.
Well,
Enough to see.
GTC, that's a car.
Just a bunch of cars.
That's a bunch of cars. I guess that's the model name. Maybe like GTC.edu. I don't know if that would make any difference. There, we got one. So somebody on Flickr put the logo there. Okay, so that's how you do it. That's how you use JSONP to access data from a different server. You can use this for get Flickr's, Snapchat, any comments for any site. You can get tweets from Twitter, and so on.